G'day and welcome to Kenty Blitz, your daily hit of NRL news. Kenty, I'm happy to be back, mate. I'm happy to be back. I brought you a gift.
Yeah, I don't know about you, mate. I feel ridiculous in this shirt. But I'll tell you what, if that's all you can afford, that's all you can afford.
That's all we got to do. Mate, I feel like coming home to a girlfriend who, you know what, my first ever girlfriend, you know, when I was away, I was kind of sitting on the beach thinking about you. Not in that way, but I'm happy to be back anyway.
Well, that's good. I don't know where that was going, but let's end that now. And mate, we can move on, and you can tell us the good news.
Okay, well, mate, we've got some great news. Mate, I'm very pleased to announce that PointsBet, Built Different, have come on board as our first big sponsor. It's I know you love a bet, Kenty.
Yeah, I do. I tell you what, that's look, I've got an account at PointsBet, so.
If they want to tip a bit in.
Look, it's a very easy app to navigate around, which is, I think, when you want to have a bet, that's half the problem. Just being able to get through it and get it on quickly. You know, it's like when that whale comes in late. Yeah. So, very, very thankful to PointsBet, and no doubt we'll be continuing to utilise them.
The interesting thing about working with you, Kenty, is it doesn't matter what time of the day it is. You get a tip from somewhere. From somewhere.
It could be racing anywhere in the world.
Yeah, very good.
I've had tips in France. So,
very good.
Yeah. So anyway, they come through.
Yeah, and the other big thing that you've been calling for since for the last couple of weeks has been a Fanatics resident statistician.
Yes. Yeah.
And we've managed to get one of those.
Well, StatMate have come on board.
Yeah.
I tell you what I like about them too is when you go through and you look for things. For example, State of Origin tomorrow night.
Yep.
You go to StatMate and you can put a filter through it. So you can look at how often someone has scored tries with a certain player playing 5/8 or halfback, or with or without the halfback. You know what I mean? Like, so which when you want to narrow down your choices, I think
like you do. Yep.
Well, you got to try and have an educated guess, don't you? It's all responsible. So yeah, look, I like it. It's a good app. It's a worthwhile app. It's not just hollow stats. It's legitimate stats. So.
Very good. Well, our sponsors are going to be happy today because we've got some exclusives.
Oh, that's good.
And we start off with a big one today from the Gold Coast.
Yeah, it looks like the Gold Coast. Look, there's been a lot going on at the Gold Coast in recent weeks. And look, it's yet to be announced. It will be. I'm not sure when it's going to be announced, when the plan is, but they've agreed that basically the awful year they've had this year, Des Hasler's going to retire at the end of the year. So the end of an era for Des Hasler. He coached, began coaching at Manly many years ago. It's his 498th game this week.
Wow.
As an NRL coach.
Made the grand finals four times.
Yeah, 4 grand finals, 2 premierships, and just to look. A very influential coach at his peak. He's gone up there. It hasn't been as successful as he would like. As we know, Warren, there's been conjecture about his future at the club. It emerged about 5-6 weeks ago that there was a clause in his contract that if they didn't make the playoffs this year, that the club could sack him. Des, declared the battle on. To be honest, he looked like he was going on and going to fight through it. That clause wasn't presented as a threat. I don't think it's been enacted, but certainly in all the discussions with the club that they've decided, both parties have decided, or Des has decided certainly that this will be his last season. So he'll be on the way out.
Why do you think he hasn't been successful up there?
Oh, mate, that's
a long question.
Look, but it is a long question and a longer answer. But it needs to be addressed, what's going on up there. The club has been through multiple forms. The Gold Coast Chargers, the Gold Coast Seagulls. Like they've been in various forms throughout their history, going back to the 80s in the major competition. This latest one, they came in 2007. They've made the finals 4 times. The best they've done, I think it was 2010? 2010, I think it was. They got to
fourth.
They finished 4th, but got to the preliminary final. Got beat by the Roosters. So a week before the grand final. Gold Coast is a holiday destination. Even you look at other sports that have tried to put a place in there. Have not really been successful. The Gold Coast Suns in the AFL are not successful. And other codes, lesser codes, haven't been as successful either. it's a funny one because the reason everybody points out why they want to go to the Gold Coast, why they think Gold Coast is such a great investment and a great opportunity for the future, is they all look at the growth on the Gold Coast. They look at how many people there. They think about the catchment and how many kids are there and how it's the fastest growing, one of the fastest growing cities in Australia. Okay, and they see that and they think, okay, there's got to be all these kids there. They bring success. That's the greatest load of rubbish anyone can tell you. Okay, the Roosters have got the smallest juniors in the country. Okay, but it doesn't seem to be a problem for them not having juniors. I know they've got up Central Coast and things like that. Juniors and how much you've got in your area is irrelevant. What's relevant is how much money you've got, how you handle the money, and what's becoming increasingly relevant, which we're seeing more and more of in the strong clubs there. And we look at Penrith and we look at what's happening at Canterbury. We look at what the Raiders are doing. Is junior development in those elite pathways. Not a catchment. You don't want that big catchment area, but you've got to put more into your junior development. The Gold Coast have done a really poor job of that for a long, long time. They've done. Some years they've gone okay, but they've never been a powerhouse in junior development. And this is despite the fact they've got Currumbin up there, they've got Cooper Park High, they've got some really good elite football schools up there, but they just don't, Palm Beach Currumbin, but they don't know how to transition that from good kids at 15, 16 into first grade footballers. So that's a big, what's the word? That's got to take a long time to deliver that. Okay.
You'd think they've done that by now, though. They've been in the comp for
that's where they keep going on.
Decades.
Well, if I was talking to Rebecca Frizzell and who now owns 100% of the club.
Well, let's just on that. So today, Daryl Kelly sold his 50% to the Frizzell family.
Yeah, he sold out of the club, so his 50% is now entirely owned by the Frizzells.
And the knock on the Gold Coast has been a long time. Has been great people, just not hard edged enough.
Yeah, and that we thought Des would fix that. That's what's
ownership. I'm talking about
the ownership. Well, what they've got to be is more demanding of what's going on within the club there. Okay. That's they are lovely people. Like I know Rebecca personally. Daryl I didn't know as well, but he was a lovely fella. It's hard to sort of look. It's an answer that's got sort of many sort of streams to it.
Do you think this means fundamental change at the Gold Coast, though? Do you think?
I don't think it will be.
Really?
I don't think the Frizzells will come in with this fundamental change. I think they're looking at, certainly immediately, it sounds like they're looking at a clean sweep of the coaching department. Okay. So everybody out, which will be a big change. So it won't only be Des, it'll be everyone else. So I know there's a couple of assistant coaches who will probably get wind of what's happening, and they will look at the fact that, perhaps they're next in line to take over the club. The problem for the club is Des was seen as the solution. See, I thought Justin Holbrook was a very, very good coach.
Very good.
Okay. And I thought he was a good coach for that area, and he was a good coach to develop the players.
Yep.
I actually thought he was doing a good job. Now, for whatever reason, they didn't believe he was getting there fast enough. They got rid of him, and they brought in Des, who had a proven track record, old dog for a hard road, as they say. Des came in. Des was unable to enact the change he wanted. He tried hard. I think he got resistance from the players. Because they're comfortable.
Right.
Okay. They're in that comfort zone.
Okay.
Des knows what it takes to sit there and win a premiership. He tries to meet those standards. We see a little bit of Michael Maguire at the Broncos, which has got a lot of publicity. Des less so. But for example, look at David Fafita. Okay. Des basically had him playing reserve grade. Because he just wasn't performing that well. Now, Fafita's since injured himself and he's been out for surgery and all the rest of it. But it's just not worked. And I think the change in mindset, if you're going to turn this club around and have success, if you need somebody to come in. Now, Mal Manning, I don't believe worked there as the club when he was running recruitment and the special title they gave him, but he paid far too much for some of the players, who put their salary cap out of whack. I think Mal at different times when he was trying to pursue players was getting involved in the competition to get the player. And I think, for example, Dave Fafita's on $1 million, okay, and has not come anywhere near delivering on that. Tino Fasua Malawi, he has I think delivered.
Mhm.
Okay, but he's also on a lot of money. Their salary cap's out of whack. Des has tried to fix that. He's been unable to get certain players in.
Too many players in the halves. They seem to have a lot of players.
Well,
in the
they've got a
halves.
lot of players in the halves because they couldn't find one.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, we need this guy, we need this guy. Now, at the beginning of the season, they came up with the philosophy, okay, the halves aren't really who we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a couple of guys. We're going to play a different style of game. We're going to play a running, flat game. We're going to use a big forwards, very good forward pack. Use our forwards, get out of the advantage line, roll forward, and then we'll get the halves just playing a running game behind them. Okay, and then before the ball gets pinged wide. Now, they still lack that game manager. And that's been a problem for them. They've lost games this season they probably shouldn't have lost. And if they'd had a game manager at halfback, just pointing them around, just playing those percentage plays.
Is that what they're hoping for with Kieran Foran, do you think?
Well, look, Kieran can...
running six, kind of more.
Yeah, but Kieran's been injured this season too, and they're certainly a much better side when he's in the team. But there's been periods there where he hasn't been, and they've lost a fair proportion of those games. You could argue whether they're winning many more with him back in the side, but certainly they look better. They attack better when he's in the side, and they just operate better. Warren, whenever you're looking at a team that's running last, there's not one thing that fixes them.
Okay.
There's so many things that fix them. But if I'm the Titans right now...
Yeah, I'll ask you about it. So what do they do now? Where to for the Titans?
Well, what they've got to do is they've got to find the right coach, who replaces Des. Then beyond that, they've got to sit with a plan. I feel like the Titans always get impatient about their plan. Even Des. Des was brought there to achieve a certain purpose. Now, it hasn't been achieved so far, but he's a year and a half into his stint on the Gold Coast. Last year was just his first season, remember?
Yeah, crazy.
He's a year and a half into it, and they've already thrown that plan out now. That's gone. Justin Holbrook was brought in for a specific purpose himself, and that wasn't working, so they got rid of that. I think they've got to sit there and they've got to give themselves be more patient. I think they've really got to start putting into their junior investments, to put more pathway systems. They've got to take that seriously. They've got to start getting more elite talent coming through. You get a tremendous advantage when you bring your talent through.
Well, just on that, they lost one of their players down to the Storm this year because they didn't pay him the extra game.
Well, he missed out on a bonus, and
there was a lot of furor over that.
Yeah, and
it just seems to be poorly handled, doesn't it?
Well, look, I don't know the background to that and why that happened, but that can happen at clubs. But for example, I know for a fact that that happened once at Canterbury not so long ago, where a player came up short on his amount of appearances to qualify for his bonus. But Phil Gould said, you know what, mate, you've had a great season and we're going to pay you that. So he gave him the bonus anyway.
Yeah, wow.
Now, the goodwill that sends through your club, that has a really strong effect on your club. Okay. When you cut a player short, a game short, he doesn't get picked to qualify for that bonus, that can do the opposite.
Seems penny pinching, doesn't it?
Well, it sounds like that, and that's part of the problem sometimes what you've got when you've got a privately owned club, that they're looking at the dollars, and they've got to. Whereas a league club owned club or a corporation owned club like the Broncos, certainly there's an eye on the budgets of what's being spent, but by the same token, there's also the understanding that the money needs to be spent. When this is privately owned, the Frizzels, look, not that they're not licking the dates off the calendar, are they? But they are privately owned, and they're running it as a business, and they're trying to run it as a profit. And for those reasons, you're looking at things now. They might argue that they don't want to spend the money on the junior pathways that other clubs are spending, and some clubs spend a lot. Melbourne spent a fortune on their junior pathways because they understand the investment. The Roosters spend good money. Canberra have had to go back and buy into theirs. They don't spend a lot of money in Canberra, but they put a disproportionate amount into their juniors to try and just keep them at the club and to reward them. So the Titans have got to. It's got to be a ground up rebuild. It really does. Now, what they've tried to do is both ends, but they've concentrated too much at the top end. And not enough at the bottom end. And every time they get 3 years into their plan, they seem to want to change the plan.
3 years into the 5-year plan, and it's out the door.
Mate, and how many clubs does that kill?
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. There really is. It's not as simple as that, but it really is that. If you want to look for an analogy. That's it. That they get 3 years into their 5-year plan, then they want to start again, and so they never quite get there.
Yeah.
And worst thing is they question their plan. They question what they're doing. Is this working? As I said, Des was supposed to be the answer, but he wasn't the answer. Justin Holbrook before him was supposed to be the answer. He is a development coach. I thought he was doing a great job, Holbrook, but they got rid of him because he wasn't getting there quick enough. It's the biggest game in town, the Des-ire, State of Origin Game 3. If you're looking for a fun and easy way to have a flutter on the game, make sure you check out PointsBet's new 5 for $25. Answer more or less to 5 player performance questions and you get odds of $25. The fast and easy way to place the same game multi on Origin, available only in the PointsBet app. PointsBet, built different.
Chances are you're about to lose. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.
So I want to talk to you about the overhaul, right? Because there has to be an overhaul of the roster.
Yep.
So the biggest question is going to be, and I think I know what your answer will be, but I'll ask it anyway. What do you do with Tino? Do you keep him?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Look,
he's your cornerstone guy, right?
Not only that would I keep him, I would go to Tino and I would include him in their strategies for how they rebuild the club, because he is the alpha at the club. He is the guy who is the undisputed leader of the club. He's the best player at the club. So you've got to include him in. You've got to make him feel part of the rebuild. You've got to say to him, because the last thing you really want is for another club to start whispering in his ear and say, look, mate, you're going nowhere there.
Perth.
Well, Perth, he's already been thrown up as an option for Perth. Okay, so that's happened. And this is going to be the big problem for the Titans now is, okay, they're going to have to go out. They're going to start again. Okay, firstly, they're going to have to find themselves a coach, right? Now, after they find the coach, what do? They have to then start to rebuild and start to regenerate their roster. But they're going to be doing that while the Bears are coming into the market.
Yeah, good point.
And then a year after, Papua New Guinea come into the market.
Good point.
So they're really going to struggle.
Yep.
And the knock on the Gold Coast is the fact that they don't have a proven or any real history of success. So that's going to be hard to sell to a bloke who's got an offer to go to the Bears or an offer to go to Papua New Guinea or an offer to play for the Gold Coast, who just show that they can't win. So So that's a knock on them straight away, and that's been part of the problem. They pay far too much in wages because they get their salary cap. They're always paying overs. To try and get a guy to go to the play there, but because they've paid him an extra 100, they've paid this guy an extra 100, and that guy an extra 100. Well, there's 300 they can't spend on a guy who only wants 500. But they've only got 200 left in the cap now because they've overspent.
I just want to read you something from Tino. This is what he said a couple of days ago. As a club, we need to sit down and roadmap and direct where things need to be headed and have clarity around it. Obviously, there's a lot of things up in the air at the moment, and that's probably what's weighing me down the most. It's hard to talk about. I get a bit emotional.
Yeah, well,
it's pretty telling, isn't it?
It is, but that's exactly what we've been speaking about, isn't it? That the fact that they need to sit down and they need a clear plan on how they get the club to improve. Like Warren, I don't like saying it, but I don't think they really do. I don't think they have an idea.
You don't think they understand what it takes to win?
I don't think there's anyone at the club there. I think Des has certainly shown he's got an idea. Okay, he was successful at Manly. He had success at Canterbury. He did lose his way a little bit at Canterbury towards the end there. He went back and he had more success at Manly, but Des also had people around him who knew what was going on. Bob Fulton was a great sounding board for him, and I think that was an opportunity for him at different times. And Bozo's understanding of rugby league was 2020. Okay, he was a genius player, and he just had his intellect for the game, his ability to spot a footballer or spot a problem within a team was nearly always spot on, which is what made him what he was. And so he was a great sounding board for Des to be able to run that off. I don't think Des has got that at the Titans, and I think he's probably missed that a little bit. And the Titans, there's just not enough high footy IQ in the club, and certainly there's no one in the club that I've sort of come across who's shown an ability to rebuild a club. Des has, but you can't rebuild them in 18 months, and certainly they're not doing what they're not doing as well as they have been doing.
Well, you and I were talking earlier about some of the recruits they've made, and they've made some good recruits, Matt Rogers, Scott Prince, but also
early days,
but also some questionable recruits: Dave Taylor, Jamal Idris, Ash Taylor, Jared Hayne.
Yeah, and
more
see,
recently as well.
they're going for the shiny new toy. Okay, all those guys. Ash Taylor, they paid a fortune. Ash Taylor was going to be anything as a 19-year-old kid.
Yeah,
I paid a fortune for him. Didn't work out. Jared Hayne, it was a ridiculous purchase, to be fair. Jared was coming back from playing in the NFL. We could assume his best days were probably behind him. They paid massive overs to take him away from Parramatta, which is where everybody thought he was going at the time. So it's a typical Gold Coast problem. They're paying more for their marquee players than they should be paying. And Warren, I speak about this continuously because it's just so important in the game. If you start paying above your value, you can't win. You cannot succeed.
Yeah,
okay, because you cannot get enough quality players in your side. Now, if you take the $1 million that David Fafita is on right now, Fafita, if you take his $1 million and you could pour that into a top quality halfback, would you do it? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Now he could. There's no doubt he's got talent. It's never worth $1 million a year. Though it was ridiculous paying that money, but they've paid that for him. And it's money that they couldn't spend on a halfback, which is now why they've got 5 or 6 halfbacks sitting there trying to see which one works.
Yeah.
Okay, but they're all roughly
playing
the same.
out of position.
But they're roughly the same talent. They're roughly the same, wage bracket. Yep. They are essentially they're paying 3 or 4 times over for the same problem to try and hope one of them works out. That's what's got to be fixed. And this is where. You talk about a guy like Phil Gould. Like I know we gave him half a bake yesterday, Gould. But the one thing he's very good is finding the square pegs for the square holes, okay? And he's got an ability to come in. And if you look at what he's done, I would say up until this year at Canterbury, okay, the way he's gone out and he got Kickow and he got Crichton and the players he has gone and targeted, he's done a magnificent job. He did the same at Penrith, okay? He was able to pick those really good players that just fixed the problem, their immediate problem, but also had enough faith to come in to pick players who were going to come in and develop through the system. And what you do is you figure out, okay, this guy, I've got him here. He's going to last about 3 years, okay? And I'll give you a really good example of what Penrith did really well was they had Jerome Luai there, and they knew at some point his development was going to be such, a club would come in and go, you know what? We're going to take this kid. We're going to pay him, and Penrith aren't going to be able to afford what we can pay him, and that's what West Tigers did. Okay, Penrith just realised they could not get Luai in the cap for what West were going to pay him. Yeah. So what they did, they had the kid coming behind him called Katoa. Okay, who's going to come in now? They had him positioned to take the job, ready to go. That's what really good pathway development's all about. You've got this guy, but you got to first have the nous to understand you're not going to be able to hang on to him. Yep. Penrith have had to prioritise who they wanted to keep. Yep. So Isaiah Yeo was one. Nathan Cleary, obviously he was one. Dylan Edwards was okay. But they also had guys they knew they were going to lose. So they knew they were going to lose Crichton. They knew they were going to lose Kickow. Okay, they've game plan essentially, okay, these guys, we're not going to be able to afford to hang on to all of them. So what we need to do is we need to keep developing players behind them, because what happens is those young kids come through and you'll get 2, sometimes 3 years out of them on the contracts they're on, where you're basically getting them at a bargain price. At unders. Yeah, and then out of that, then they get their next contract and they go to market, start to get market value, okay? And then they get towards into their next contract after that, or the contract after that, and they start to get the reward in their contract that wasn't there in the earlier deals, and that's what Luai has done now. Tell me, Kenty, how does that work from a club perspective? So within the club, you've got your general manager of football, say it's Gus Gould, then you've got Serraldo, and then you've got your recruitment managers. Who makes those decisions? Who decides to let that player go? How long ahead do they think about it? Look, this is where the NRL is not as professional as it claims to be. Okay, so if you look at say major sport in America, there is a general manager at all those clubs who's fully in charge of that. He'll do it with the consultation of the coach, but it's his choice.
At arm's length from the coach.
Yeah, he'll talk to the coach. What do you think of this guy? And then a couple of instances, Bill Belichick, for example, he was also coach and general manager.
Okay.
Now, we sort of operate without giving them those titles. We operate a lot of that way here in the NRL. So Craig Bellamy will, with Frank's understanding and agreement, will have a say over who he wants. Trent Robinson, Ricky Stewart, they all have that. Des has at the Titans. They all have the final say. Canterbury don't. Phil Gould is the guy who hires and fires the players and runs the roster. Okay. Now, the benefit of doing it that way is the general manager has a plan for the long-term success of the club, and he's thinking 4, 5, 6 years ahead.
This is something you always talk about, Kenty, not playing for tomorrow, playing for years ahead.
If you say to a coach, mate, you got to get us off the bottom this year. You put a clause in like Gold Coast did, which I think is the most naive clause they've put in. Okay, you put this pressure on Des. If you don't make the 8 this season, they can sack him. What's Des going to do? What's a normal man going to do? What do? You put all your efforts into this short-term success, even if it comes to the cost of your long-term success. Now, that's not good for any club.
No.
The Titans, if Des had put it all into the Titans making the 8 this season, and they scrape into the 8, but to do that, he's sacrificed the welfare of a certain couple of players by making them play with injury or asking them to play with injury, or he's got rid of a good young kid because he's not quite ready yet, so we'll get a more senior player in who's not really going to amount to much, but he's going to give me the result I want this year. That's the sort of things that happen. And they won't, no one will admit that. No coach will come out and admit that, but that's what happens. But when you have a situation where you have a working relationship with a Phil Gould and a Cameron Ciraldo or a Craig Bellamy and a Frank Panisi, where they can sit there. Frank's always got his eye on what's happening down the line at the Storm. Belichick's trying to win today, okay, but they work well enough together that they know where they're going. They've had a few disagreements over the years. There was a bit of a blue years back when Bellamy was asking how Nico Hines got away with the year he won the Dally M medal. But that was Frank's decision, okay? That's the way the club works. The Titans, they don't have anyone there. They've got recruitment guys, but the recruitment guy's sitting there and he's doing the bidding of the coach. And to be fair to him, Mal's about to take him over to the Perth Bears, but I wouldn't say he's got a proven track record of hitting home runs with his recruitment. Okay, in fact, I think their recruitment's been quite poor, which is a concern for the Bears if they want to think about that.
Yeah, right.
But there's not a lot of people do that, and the irony of it all, though, Warren, is when players retire these days from the game, what do they want to do? They either want to be a coach, so they go straight into the assistant coaching role, or get a junior coaching role within the club and try and work their way through, or they go and work in the media, okay, which is their hands up. I don't want to deal with the pressure of coaching, so that's what I'm going to do. No one wants to go and be the general manager or wants to learn that side of the business. And the truth of it all is, there's no doubt in 20 years' time, they'll be the most powerful people within the club.
Yeah. So the Titans now, what do? They need a general manager and they need a coach.
Well,
let's talk about a coach. Who's out there?
It's going to be the usual suspects, isn't it? Jason Dimitri's trying to get the Papua New Guinea job.
Blake Green's there at the moment.
Blake Green's there. I think he'll be, by sounds of it, not 100%, but by sounds of it, he'll be part of the clean sweep out of the club. So I don't think that's going to augur well for him to get the head coaching job.
Willie Peters.
Willie Peters has done a magnificent job in England. Okay, and Willie's really shown himself. He's done the assistant jobs here in Australia at a few clubs. He look, all reports are, and the way you watch them play football over there, he's doing a great job. Okay, he's also a development coach, so I think he would be a good buy.
Brad Arthur.
Well, Brad's looking for a job, so he'll be. There's no doubt that his management will be onto the Gold Coast. They have a strong relationship too with the Gold Coast hierarchy there, so that they have a good relationship there. They'll be pushing Brad Arthur down the line there.
And then a couple of those guys we've talked about before, Hornby, Young.
Kenty Woz will stick his hand up, so that's another one. So there's not they're not going to be short of options. But the thing about the Gold Coast, their future is not on so much the coach. It's what's going to be around it and what the coach will come in and say all the right things. He'll tell them he's going to improve their pathways, and he'll tell them at the same time he's doing that, he's going to improve them as an NRL team. So they're going to hear all that. The club needs to think bigger picture. They need to start to figure out how they can just take that junior base that they've got and actually turn a lot of those kids who are good schoolboy footballers into elite NRL players.
Kenty,
I haven't figured that out yet.
I hear a left field one, and I know people are going to laugh about this, but I've heard from multiple very good sources that Gus Gould is a chance to go to the Gold Coast. And let's just wait and see whether
I'll
that
leave
happens.
that with you.
He's got 1 year left.
That's Warren saying that, not me.
Mate, let's finish off. Des Hasler, any chance he'll come back and coach elsewhere?
He could. Look, I know he's going to retire, but a coach has ever really retired. Okay, so I don't know if he'll come back.
You know him well. Give me a good story. Give me what about this mad professor kind of image? Is that?
Look. Des is the madness of the mad professor is that it actually works. Okay, Des is nothing like that. Des as a player, his nickname was Sorry. Okay, because he's the quietest bloke in the world, and someone could come run across the field and bash into him, and Des would apologise to them. You know what I mean? That's his nickname. But I know Des plays the game. Des would bring you up, mate. I've got an idea for you.
As a journo,
right? Yeah. I got an idea for you. You go, what? You go, mate, we should get back to, well, I can't believe I'm saying this. We should get back to one marker. And you're like, what? Mate, they'll open the game up. We need to get back to one marker. And you're like, Des, back her off, mate. Like, seriously, I'm not going to fall for that.
Yeah, right.
And him, when he was at Manly, and him and Bozo and Zorba and that, they used to sit there and plant stupid stories.
Very good.
To see what journos would pick it up and run with it.
Yeah,
We got this bloke, we got him, you know what I mean? So the whole Mad Professor, what he figured out with the Mad Professor Act was it kept journos off balance, it kept them at a distance, it kept them from getting to know him, and he preferred it that way. I remember reading a story years ago, and it was about Des doesn't talk to any media. Des is like, mate, what did you think about that story today? You know what I mean? Like, there are some guy, like he used to ring me quite often. Yeah. Bulldog is always on the phone too. He likes taking the Mickey out of Bulldog all the time. Like, he's got some real friendships in the media, and he just plays it against the media. Like some of the stuff he gets asked, like he's very good at making people feel awkward and very good at sort of making someone will say something and Des will sort of give them this confused look and come up with an answer that makes no sense, right? And he does it to see if the quote's going to make the paper. Yeah. He's not doing it because he thinks that's the answer to what they've asked. He just comes up with ridiculous stuff sometimes.
Awesome.
And he'll say to you later, what do you think about that? And just like, leave me out of it. But that's the way he operates. He's just like I found it quite funny.
Yeah.
He is a funny guy. A good guitar player too.
Is he?
Yeah, people didn't know that. There's one for you.
Well, thanks, Kenty. Very good. I actually enjoyed that half an hour more than 9 days drinking pina coladas on the beach in Hawaii. Anyway, thanks very much, and thanks also to PointsBet, built different.